Good Shabbos. One of the mitzvahs that have become quite prevalent and popular is baking challah. Baking challah means that you bake a bread and you separate a piece and you give it, in the times of the temple, it was given to the Kohen. Today, it's just separated, you make a blessing, and you burn it or put it away some other way. And this mitzvah has become a tremendous skula for different blessings in people's lives. So you have individuals who come together and bake challah for someone getting a shidduch, or for someone becoming better and well. There was a woman in Akku who had a baby, and for 5 weeks she was unconscious and she was on a respirator. And so her mother came to the Rebbetzin Levi, and asked her, maybe we should do a challah bake. And they did a challah bake for her with many women, and the aunt is kneading the dough and making a bracha. And as soon afterwards, they get notification that she's come to. She's come back to consciousness. A week later, she calls the Rebbetzin saying, I felt your blessings. And I don't know you, but I felt your blessings, and that has brought me back to health. And a month later, they already made a thank you meal. So what is it about challah? What's the specialty and uniqueness of this mitzvah? Now, the juxtaposition of challah in this week's parsha is that it's right after the whole story of the spies, lengthy story in itself. We come to the mitzvah of challah, and thereafter there's a mitzvah, or the Torah tells us about bringing a offering if the entire community, by mistake, worships idols. What do I mean by mistake? It's not for now. The question is, why is challah and idol worship, or aberration about idol worship, right next to each other? And the Medrash actually tells us that someone who keeps challah denounces idolatry, and someone who doesn't is as if he's involved in idolatry. Why? What's the logic behind it? And why challah in particular? There are many mitzvahs associated with agriculture and produce in Israel, such as Meiser, giving a tithe away, giving truma to a Kohen, first fruits. What's unique about challah? The fact is that challah also was meant to be only in Israel, but nevertheless, we keep it in the diaspora as well, whereas the tithing of agriculture is only kept in Israel. So why challah is something that our rabbis felt should be kept everywhere in the world? And again, the question is the uniqueness and special quality of what this mitzvah represents. So, Cain and Hevel had a fight. Cain and Abel. What was their fight? Cain brought a offering to Hashem, and it wasn't accepted. And Abel brought the first of his sheep to Hashem, and it was accepted. The difference in Cain and Abel were that Abel gave the first of his fruits, and Cain gave of his produce, but not of the first of it. In challah, the mitzvah is to give the first. At first, you need a dough, you take the first piece and you give it away to Hashem. And the representation is the following. It's the fact that we acknowledge that everything that we have comes from Hashem. That there is no independent power. That there is no natural resource that we have based on our actions, our emphasis, but rather we attribute it to Hashem. How do we see that? Because the first piece goes to the one who's most involved and most responsible for a success of any sort. If you have a birthday party, the first piece of birthday cake goes to the birthday boy because the whole party's for him. And so on, wherever you make something, so the first always goes to the one most responsible. And therefore, when a Jew separates a piece of challah and gives it as a gift to Hashem, he's saying that the first belongs to Hashem. Why? Because He's most responsible. Because we could think and look at nature and think that nature is what gives us the bread on our table. But the truth is, if you think about it, nature is just miracles happening all the time, regularly. Think about it. Jews come out of Egypt and they're hungry. They go to Moshe. Moshe says, tomorrow you're getting bread from heaven. Bread from heaven doesn't make sense. Bread comes from the ground. No, bread from heaven. Indeed, the next day they get manna from heaven. What bracha do they make on it? Hamoitzi lachem min hashamayim, with the one who's given us bread from the heavens. 40 years they're eating bread from heaven. Now the kids are born. All what they know is bread comes from heaven. And even shortly thereafter, Jews are complaining about this bread from heaven because it's all the same and so on. They don't have any different kind of foods. It's one kind of food, but this is their nature now. Now they come into Israel, and Joshua says to them, "Okay, bread from heaven's over. Now it's going to be bread from the ground." What bread from the ground? You take a seed, like 2 centimeters. You put it into the ground, and poof. You get stalks of wheat that will grow, or any other produce, and that's what you will eat. They say, put a seed in the ground, and then you're going to get lots of seeds from that. It doesn't make sense. Bread comes from heaven, because we saw that for year in, year out, day in, day out, year in, year out for 40 years. But of course, well, we have to acknowledge that even when the bread comes from the ground, it's actually coming from Hashem. And this is the distinction and difference between Chala and Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is saying the essential idea of idolatry is that there are powers other than God. That I need the sun and the moon, who have free choice, to give me by beneficence. That Hashem, even if He created everything, He went on, He's not involved. And He leaves over the power to the sun, to the moon, to the lawyer, to the accountant, to the doctor. There, and I have to get a good one. That's a kind of a idea associated with idolatry. Challa says no. The Mitzva of Challa says no. That the first and the only one responsible for my success, or for me having this bread on my table, is Hashem. And that was the issue with Cain and Hevel. Cain says, I was involved. I made these things grow. I worked the land. Hashem, sure, he also is involved. I'm going to give him too, but not the firstborn. First is me, because I'm the one most involved. Hevel says no. First goes to Hashem. So, but why Chala over all the other mitzvahs? Because here's an interesting thought. A person who's involved in agriculture, actually, is very much aware of Hashem's hand in the agriculture. The seasons, rain, the sun, when it comes, when it doesn't. He's very much aware that it's not all in his control, and he really needs a lot of mazel or bracha from Hashem. Like I tell you, there's a story, I think I once shared it, of there's a person who grows peaches and plums and nectarines and all these stone fruits in Israel. He has many, many thousands of trees, and he gets a hechsher in the Shemitah year, when you're not allowed to do many things with regards to your how you cultivate your growth. He gets hechsher from Rabbi Landau in Bnei Brak, which is one of the strictest hechsherim of kashrus in Israel. Anyways, he 3 Shemitahs ago, in 2001, it was the middle of a sabbatical year, and the way it works is that when the trees grow and they flower, and then they make small fruit, you have to dilute the fruits on the tree, because otherwise it'll be too heavy for the tree, and you won't get big, nice fruit. And it'll kind of be wasted. You must dilute it so that it grows in a beautiful way. And this fellow so you first take off the flowers, and then when you take off the small fruit. However, in a Shemitah year, all you can do is take off the flowers. Once it's a fruit, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to take it off. You have to leave it on the tree. So he had so many thousands of trees. He was able to take, when it was flowering for a few days, he was able to take off some, but most of it he wasn't able to. So he goes to the rabbi and says, "Rabbi, we're not going to have any plums in Bnei Brak this year. I don't know what to tell you." The rabbi says, "Sorry, there's nothing I could do. Daven, and hopefully the mitzvah of Shemitah that you're going to keep is going to stand you in good stead." Anyway, this is in the beginning of May. At the end of May that year, there was a terrible storm and a winds in central Israel. We have these trees, and many of the dilution took place in the hands of heaven. And other guys who took off the fruits earlier were left with nothing. And this guy was a nice dilution, and he had the biggest fruits ever. So this kind of thing happens when you keep laws of Shemitah, when you keep laws of Meiser. It's more obvious that Hashem's hand is in your life. When you talk about Chala, when I have flour and water, and I knead it into a dough, and I place it in an oven, and I bake it, you don't see the hand of God. So one could attribute it to themselves. When we then take the first part and say, no, Hashem, I recognize that this challah comes from you, that is the most powerful way that we, in an area of life that seems totally within our control, are able to acknowledge that it's actually coming from Hashem. That is why the Mitzva of Challa is done even outside of Israel. That's why it is the antithesis to idolatry, the recognition that it's all and everything that we have in our life comes from Hashem. And just to conclude with the following little story, the little anecdote that brings this out. There was this youngster who was giving his father a hard time. His father was quite a wealthy man, and this young man used to sleep till midday and go out all night, and he didn't get involved in working or doing anything of that nature. And there was a lot of they were at loggerheads, the father and the son. One day the son says, "Dad, you don't like it? I'm out of here. I'll make it on my own." 2 weeks he sleeps on a park bench. After 2 weeks, a man comes up to him, talks to him, and says, "You know what? I have a basement. You could sleep in my. I have a bed there. You could sleep there." And they say, "You know what else? I have a bakery. You could be an apprentice in my bakery." After 6 months, the young man thinks he'll open his own bakery, and so he does. He opens it, but unfortunately, it's not in a very good location. He's not doing well at all. Some guy comes in, well-dressed man, tastes some of his baked goods, and he says, "Oh, you're really good. I'm going to go into partnership with you and make bakeries in central locations. We need better areas so that people come and buy." So they go to different places and they open 5 shops, and he's doing really well. And after that, it's about 3 years, since he left home, he sends his father a letter. He says, "Dad, I want to tell you I'm doing well on my own, and I want to. So I didn't I didn't contact you till now because I wanted to be able to come back to you and say I made it on my own." Father says, "It's so nice to hear that you're successful. It's beautiful. Just let me tell you, who do you think would have invited someone to be in their basement, like a homeless man, after being in the street for 2 weeks? And why would he get someone who knows nothing about baking to be an apprentice with him? And who do you think would go into partnership with someone who has not shown any success and open 5 shops in central areas? It was all me. I'm the one who hired someone. I paid his rent to have you in that basement. I was the one who paid for all these shops. So I'm very glad you're successful now, but you should know that it's. I just want to know where it's coming from. I want you to know where it's coming from. That's us and Hashem. We have to know where it's coming from. That everything in our life, our blessings, are coming from Hashem. There's no such thing as nature on its own. Nature is a means and a way that Hashem brings blessings into our life. Good Shabbos.